Our first speaker is Armin Kick. He's Director of Business Development for High Speed Rail for Siemens Industry. He's actually based here in California, and he has been a supporter and a member of the U.S. High Speed Rail Association since, I think, day one. And we thank you for that, Armin, and thank Siemens for your ongoing support. Armin is responsible for leading the locomotive business and high-speed rail business development activities for Siemens in North America. He has, over 15 years, been holding various positions in rolling stock, including project management for various large-scale projects and management of an off-site production facility. Most recently, he was focused on the business development activities for the high-speed rail and other intercity projects, including All Aboard Florida. And I did mention that project in my presentation, and Armin will be talking more about that. They supplied all the brand new trains, made them all here in California, and shipped them across country to Florida, where they're now in service and moving happy Floridians around. So with that, please welcome Armin Kick.
Well, with that, Andy, thank you very much. But, half the presentation's gone by now, so thanks. Anyway, it's great to be back. It's great to be at the MTA headquarters here, a place right next to Union Station that has such potential to become one of the global hubs, a hub of significance when high-speed rail comes into the station, just like was mentioned by Phil this morning. The opportunity right next door to this building is just enormous. When high-speed rail comes to Los Angeles in a big way, it has tremendous opportunity to be a world-class station right next door here, and then I wouldn't have to fly in the night before because I could hop on a train and be here well-rested in time to start a program in the morning. So, with that, are you guys ready for an update on high-speed rail 2018? I can't hear you. Are you ready? All right, let's do it. Let's see what's new. Let's see what's new and exciting around high-speed rail around the globe. All right, so for this year, I picked, these are the picks for 2018 that I want to talk about. Number one, Brightline is in revenue service. So that's exciting and new down in Florida. I want to talk about this real quick. Then there's a new high-speed line that opened at the end of 2017 in Germany, which creates a great new connection and lots of travel time savings. So we'll look at Germany next. Then for Eurostar, Eurostar is expanding service into Belgium and the Netherlands. That is starting very, very soon, so I want to highlight that. Then we're going to peek into the UK and what's happening on the second high-speed line in the UK, HS2, where construction is starting. And then number 5, we're going to go to Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and just see what the progress is there with that project. Obviously, it has the potential to become one of the mega projects in Asia around high-speed rail. Let's try this a second time. So with that, what is happening down in Florida? So revenue service has started. So that means every day trains are going per schedule between West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale. And soon the service is planned to go all the way down to the Miami station. So $3 billion is what's expected that this project will cost when it is end-to-end Miami to Orlando. It covers 235 miles between the two cities. And it will provide service between the two urban centers in under 3 hours. And if you've been to a high-speed rail conference before, that's always the point we drive home, travel time versus distance and how that really works. And obviously here in the case of Florida, that can be done with diesel electric service. And you get to a trip time under or around 3 hours. And that is really a massive improvement over trying to drive it, especially because driving around in South Florida is something that, your travel time can be anything depending on the day, the time of day. And South Florida traffic is really an issue. So here, trains will go eventually 125 miles an hour between the two cities and will connect to Orlando in under 3 hours, which is part of that niche where high-speed rail really plays out nicely. Also, there is no air traffic between those two cities ever since security and everything else was implemented. It just doesn't make any sense to fly. So this is an example where high-speed rail is really competing with the private automobile. So Brightline is operated by All Aboard Florida, and there will be 4 stops on the line. As I just mentioned, the service has now opened between West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale as a starter service. As soon as the Miami station opens up, service will go down to Miami, and then phase 2 will be kicked into gear to extend that service all the way to Orlando. The predicted ridership here is 3 million people a year. Next, please. Steve, are you, okay, there you go, thanks. So January 13th saw the inauguration of the revenue service. That's now open between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. And it was opened with great fanfare. And many things are done differently in Florida. And so also this train service is a very refreshing example of how to do things differently and in a very Floridian way. Every train has a different exterior look. It's all based on hospitality approach to what the rider actually sees. So it's really uniquely done and in a very, very Floridian way. Next. So let's talk about the trains real quick. So these trains, here you see the blue train, the bright blue train. Those trains were manufactured in our facility in Sacramento, California. Start to end with everything that's involved in vertically integrated railcar manufacturing. And you see our workforce here celebrating when we shipped the first train out of the factory. The other very important factor here is ADA accessibility. So here for the first time, we actually get level boarding at 48-inch platforms in Florida. That means easy level boarding, no steps to get onto a train, and a gap filler device that actually closes the gap between the car shell and the platform edge, as this train is actually operated on an active freight railroad. And with that, there's a whole new opportunity there for how passenger rail can go to the next level in the US on a freight railroad, level boarding at high platforms. And again, it's very exciting how All Aboard Florida has developed that project and has gone ways and has really improved on that. And the other big news here is that this train is ADA accessible from end to end, so you can go through it from each car to each other car with a wheelchair on a flat surface to the cafe car that will come when phase 2, back to your seat. So this is the most accessible solution that has been created so far. And this is really, really exciting, and we hope that that is leading the way for more train service in America that has these type of amenities and is accessible like that. Also to mention, these trains are by America, are fully US built, and comply with all of the regulation that's here active. So let's talk about the amenities. Here again, Florida was very, very focused on what the rider will experience when taking a train, and they wanted to make sure that you can bring all your electronics on the train and plug them in. And then you can bring some more electronics if you want and plug those in as well. And there is lightning speed Wi-Fi. So when they told us we want Wi-Fi, we said, yeah, you get Wi-Fi. They said, no, you don't understand. We get Wi-Fi. So next time you take a trip on the train, you try it out yourself. So they wanted to make sure it works. So it works lightning fast. And there's a big focus on hospitality, on what you can consume on the train. There's big trays that are actually big enough for your laptop, or food, drink, and other things. And this all creates a new exciting travel option for Florida. So that's the update on Florida. So let's switch over to Germany. Here, a brand new high-speed line went into service at the end of 2017, and it basically connects Berlin and Munich Some of the segments have been there previously, like a segment south of Nuremberg had already been built, but this project really now connects Nuremberg up to Erfurt and up to Berlin and brings some major benefits to the traveling public. So it's about a 10 billion euro project. The total distance between the two cities is 314 miles, and it cut travel time by about 2 hours on the train, and now comes in just a tad under 4 hours to connect the two major cities, which are two of the biggest cities in Germany. The actual section that's new is about 140 miles between Nuremberg and Erfurt. That's what opened up, and it's very hilly. You'll see some pictures on this later. There was a lot of work that had to go into this. And this one compares really well. If you want to take a bus, you can take a bus. It's a 7-hour and 20-minute ride from Munich to Berlin. You can do that. You get Wi-Fi too, but you're stuck on a bus. Or you can go by train in under 4 hours. Or you can obviously fly, but this connection is becoming very, very competitive on time. And for intermediate cities like Nuremberg to Berlin, it really doesn't make any sense to try and fly this, because now you're much faster taking the train. And if you Google it for a car ride, it's about a 5-hour, 35-minute car ride. So this kind of gives you the perspective again, when we talk about high-speed rail, how does it fit into the overall picture? What does it do? How can people utilize this service at 300 kilometers an hour or 186 miles an hour? You get to this trip time, and it creates a new connection in Germany that is really very comparable to flying, and it is expected to double the ridership to 3.6 million people a year. So here's a couple pictures of how that looks. So going through Thuringia and Saxony, it's quite hilly. There's lots of tunnels, lots of viaducts, and this is an example of stay the course. So this project wasn't easy. As a matter of fact, the project started as a German reunification project after reunification, and then was initiated in 1991, and it opened in 2017. So that would be 26 years. So is that a lesson learned? Well, probably it is. So what are the reasons why it took so long? Originally, it should have been done in 2000. There was all sorts of political jockeying going on. There's 2 federal states along the line, there's other things going on. There was, in fact, a complete construction halt for 3 years in the middle of this because there was no money. And still it came back and eventually was finished in December of last year. So why am I saying all this? It's a beautiful example of this isn't easy, and this doesn't come quick. And what you got to do is you got to stay the course. And that's a beautiful lesson learned for California, I would say. There's 29 railway viaducts, like you see here on the pictures, and there's 25 tunnels on this line. So certainly it wasn't easy, and it wasn't cheap to get there. On tunnel construction alone, there was 2,500 people employed while this line was being built. So there's lots of economic development. And there was 36,000 properties that had to be purchased in order to build that line. See any similarities here? All right. So this isn't easy to do. This takes some real efforts. And I'm very proud to be in California, where the state is actually stepping up and doing this. And it won't be easy. And we know it isn't easy, but we'll get there. What you see also here is the ICE4 trains that are the new backbone for intercity service in Germany. So those are the trains Siemens is building for the DB now, and we're under contract to build 1,335 coaches for the service. And as you see, they're running on the new line. All right, let's switch to Eurostar. So here's the next example that I want to highlight. There's news on Eurostar. This map shows where Eurostar operates. Some of the services are seasonal. And the big news here is that Eurostar will open up the service into Belgium and Netherlands on April the 4th. And that is very exciting and new. This project is a $1.4 billion project. The the distance that's named here is between London and Amsterdam, 390 miles, comes in at 3 hours and 41, and it's a 200-mile-an-hour ride. So Eurostar is now branching out to provide more connections in Europe, and that's really exciting and new. As a matter of fact, the trip from London to Rotterdam will come in exactly at 3 hours. And the investment here also includes the Eurostar terminal installations in the 2 Dutch cities. So what happened here, there was an inaugural run in February of this year, and that was the fastest ever trip time between London, St. Pancras, and Brussels. And our E320 train did that in 1 hour and 46 minutes. So you can get from London to Brussels in 1 hour and 46 minutes. This is an example where we really can highlight what happens in competition between rail and aviation. So at the trip times mentioned here between the continental cities and London, it doesn't make sense to fly. You know, the air connections between London and Amsterdam, it's one of the busiest air routes in Europe. There's, I'll look that up, there is 17 British Airways flights, 21 EasyJet flights a day, so lots of air traffic. But you can now take a train, and it's a very convenient solution. And the Eurostar tickets are out there for 49 bucks. So it is very, very competitive with what the low-cost airlines are offering. And with that, let's go to the next slide. Let's look at some other aspects here. So this is the E320 train. It's a very efficient train. It has, you know, the energy consumption on that train is lower than what Eurostar was using previously. Eurostar also has a very engaged program. It's called Tread Lightly environmental program. It's a 10-step, it's actually the 10th anniversary of that program. And it's a 10-point plan to reduce the environmental impacts and bring down the CO2 and the waste coming from the service overall. And Eurostar has the goal by 2030 to be totally free from fossil fuel energy being used for their services. They're putting solar panels on their depot in the UK, and they're eliminating paper with electronic ticketing. So there's a lot of initiatives going on the environmental side as well. And obviously the big deal here is when you compare, you know, going on a short haul air connection or the train, it is a whole lot greener to take a train when it's between cities of that distance. There's some interior shots of the E320, the 200-mile-an-hour train, as it operates and will operate into Amsterdam very, very soon. It's actually a 400-meter train, so it's twice as long as a normal standard high-speed train. 16 megawatts of power propel that train forward. It has a 20% higher seating capacity than previous trains, and around 900 people find room there. It offers Wi-Fi, and as I mentioned, it's about 90% cleaner right now compared to taking an airplane. So with that, let's switch over to economic development for a little bit. High-speed projects have a lot to do with environmental benefits and economic development. And you see some of the logos here of what we've talked about at each one of these conferences, you know, connectivity, economic growth, job creation, passenger experience, sustainability. The HS2 project in the UK actually does a very, very good job articulating these effects of why these projects really make sense. And so in HS2, they use, you know, the 5 key arguments: capacity and connectivity for 21st century transportation to provide better connections, catalyst for growth, because high-speed rail really brings growth along, skills and employment, there is great jobs to be had around this industry, passenger experience, setting a new standard of how you can actually travel in a modern society, and sustainable and good neighbor, the environmental effects that derive from, using trains versus other modes of transportation. With that, let's switch over to the next example, which is in the UK. HS2 is the second high-speed line in the UK. And what we see here, this is a very large project, 56 billion pounds or 78 billion US dollars. You see it on the map here, London to Birmingham, 140 miles. Trip time would be at 49 minutes. That's totally unbeatable. And these trains are planned to go at 250 miles an hour when that goes forward and the trains are actually operational. So this project is moving forward. There will be what's called conventional compatible trains that can branch out from this line onto existing network. And then there will also be UIC compliant trains that are on the high-speed line only, connecting that. And there's going to be lots of tunnels and viaducts, just like we saw in other examples. And it is a very, very exciting project for the UK. It will change the way people can travel in the future. Birmingham to London, 49 minutes. Manchester to London, 1 hour and 8 minutes. Birmingham to Leeds, 57 minutes. So this is the type of thing that you can't do today that you'll be able to do in the future. And HS2 is very much focusing on sustainability and respecting the environment when they built this line. So how are things lining up in the UK, and what goes first, and what actually happens here on the program? So phase 1, which you just saw on the map, is planned to get opened at the end of 2026, and then phase 2 somewhere around 2032-33. And in order to kick off all the processes that are needed to do something like this, this is actually how HS2 does it. So you see some construction work that's being planned, but you also see where we are here on the slide. So we are here, at the beginning of 2018, and what you see is lots of activities have already kicked off. So enabling works, obviously design, other aspects that are mandatory for this. The main civil contracts have not been let yet. However, station contracts are on the way. Railway systems, in California speak, that would be track and systems. And rolling stock is already kicked off. So in the case of rolling stock, the pre-qualification is already run through. There's 5 pre-qualified bidders for that. And the RFP for trains is starting very, very soon. So that's how things line up in HS2. And you have to start some of these activities very, very early in order to have, track and systems, rolling stock, and things when the civil works actually come together and that line gets built. So I think this is a good example of how that's done in the UK and how things are lined up and timed for a revenue service start date. And you can see the pre-qualifications and the RFP dates when all of this has to get started to have a viable project. With that, let's look at some other exciting aspects around HS2. I already mentioned stations. There's progress on stations. So here, the construction partners, the process to appoint construction partners for stations has been kicked off for the London station, the Euston station, and the master developer has been selected in February of this year for the Euston station as well, and the 2 stations in Birmingham are actually next. So that's how early things like stations have to get started to line up with all of the other processes to open up service at that time. So with that, let's jump to the Asian example that I brought this year. You might all have heard about the Malaysia-Singapore high-speed rail project. It's the other mega project in Asia that's now getting on the way. You can see $20 to $25 billion project, 217 miles, 90-minute trip time, 200-mile-an-hour trains are planned. This line incorporates an 18-kilometer tunnel. There's 3 types of service that are planned for this: shuttle service, direct service, and local service. So that's a very, very interesting aspect. Obviously, it connects 2 countries, and the service modeling for this is very, very interesting if you want to look into this. plan here as well is to get operational by 2026. And the ridership estimate for this is really enormous. It's 20 to 22 million passengers after a 10-year ramp-up phase for this project. So this is a very, very exciting project. It stands for, with this project, obviously a statement is made, a statement for economic development, a statement for prosperity. And the architecture that's reflected here in some concepts, reflects cultural diversity and identity. The drivers that are driving this project are things like industrial capabilities, socio-economic development along the corridor, and institutional development and capacity building in these countries. So, in my opinion, this is another very, very good example that summarizes why high-speed rail projects are so exciting and what they bring to the regions where they get deployed. With that, let's jump to the stations once more. High-speed rail stations are extremely important and are really where the economic development and the economic growth happens. And obviously, you need stations with high-speed rail. And these stations really can become dramatic hubs. You saw some of these renderings or some of the pictures. If you have a chance to go to Europe, Berlin is one of my favorites still. If you imagine there was nothing there, this was where the wall was, and now you have a hub like this with, morning to night, just bustling trains coming in perpendicular on 2 levels. It's connected with subway, streetcars, everything else, and an enormous economic development that happens around the station. That really symbolizes what high-speed rail can do when high-speed comes to town. And again, if you just think over there, this type of activity could be happening right here next door, and it's really a game changer. So with that, let's leap back to Florida. This is the plan for Florida. These are the renderings of what's planned for Miami Central down in Miami. This is on 11 acres, a highly dense development. Trains come in on the 3rd floor, basically. On the 2 lower floors is other activities provided, and then it connects, Brightline connects with Tri-Rail, Metro Rail, and the Metro Mover, and the connectivity, and all of this is really, really key. And this project brings all that connection and all of that activity into a place that used to be a parking lot before this. So it's a very, very exciting development for Miami. Let's peek inside. This is how it starts looking inside. You've got lots of activity, lots of functions, amenities, restaurants, shop, meeting places. These stations are much more than just a place to board or alight a train. These places are really city building places. And with that, let's flip over to how it looks right now. So you probably recognize the rendering, and the reality is not that far off. That's the actual progress. Station is becoming a reality here, and very, very soon trains should be coming into the 3rd floor here of this station. So latest by then, I recommend you take a trip to South Florida so you can experience these type of trains. You can see the level boarding, you can see the development at the 3 stations, and also what's happening in downtown Miami, and what kind of economic development that brings. With that, as Andy said, we've supported high-speed rail for a long, long time, many, many years, and we're staying the course. And we're very excited about what we see in California, and we're ready to serve when the time calls. And thank you very much for listening, and I'll be available for questions later. Thank you.